guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I have a very special guest, my mom, who is going to be talking to you guys all about starting a business, the first steps you should take, and kind of just starting from a business from scratch with very limited knowledge about tax stuff. So my mom is a CPA. She's just gonna jump right in, introduce herself, and kind of go over some different stuff. I thought this video would be really helpful, especially in my new series that I'm starting, building a business from scratch, because this is really the first steps you should be taking. So I'm gonna let her take it away, and I will see you guys after she's done with all her stuff. Okay, go.
Hi guys, my name is Maria Diaz. I'm Steph's mom. I've been a CPA for over 30 years. I've had my own practice for about 25 years, and I'm in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And today I'm just gonna give you a very intro to different types of businesses and different ways of starting a business, so that when you start it off, you can actually have it structured, not just for today, starting at your first couple of transactions, but to grow to maybe a multi-million-dollar business. So the structure and the steps that you take today help you not only build for today what you're starting, but also for tomorrow, because in the future you may want a line of credit, you may want to buy properties, you may want to lease a space. And if you have the structure set up from the beginning in a proper way, this first step will help you grow into the next couple of steps that you will be taking. So the first thing is, many people say, well, I don't want anything complicated. I just want to be able to sell and buy and sell, or be able to do my transactions online. Well, there's a couple of different entities that you can do, and I'm going to have a little board here. The first one is, the simplest is a sole proprietor. But basically what this is it's basically under your name. So it doesn't separate it legally or financially from your tax return or from your person. So this, it's a very simple way. Some people do a sole proprietor and they do what's called a fictitious name, or doing business as, which means that you could be Stephanie Diaz doing business as Love Always, let's just say. Or you can say, well, you know what? I really would like to have legally a separate entity from that of myself. And then what you would do is you would set that same business name, for example, Sales Unlimited, you would set it as Sales Unlimited LLC.
Dagoberto!
How am I supposed to know you're in here?
All right, so we're getting back to, we went over sole proprietor, and now we're talking about LLCs. So an LLC is kind of for tax purposes. If you're a single member, you don't have to have a separate tax return. That would end up on your personal return. The good thing is that if you manage it as a limited liability company, which is legally structured as a separate entity from you, and you only run those things that are business related from there, then legally you have managed to, anything that goes on there is separate from you personally. And that can be something very beneficial, because sometimes you may have things going on in your personal life that you don't want to impact your business. And that's why a lot of people use an LLC, the vehicle of an LLC. Now, what happens with an LLC, a lot of people think that that is a term for the IRS. LLC is a term for a legal term. That means limited liability company. You are telling the people out there, my company is limited to the amount of money that is in there. So don't come after me. It's a limited liability company. Now what happens is, if you have one member in that limited liability company, the results of that go in your personal return. So you don't have expenses related to putting those results in a separate tax return, and then that has to be combined somehow into your personal when you get dividends and things like that. I don't want to get into very complicated.
This is just the beginning.
Because this is just the beginning. And then an LLC, when it has more than one member, then that's actually considered under the laws of the IRS as a partnership. So what happens is that if you, let's say you and a friend want to do an LLC and it's two members, then that does have a separate tax return, and the results go individually based on the percentages in the tax returns of the people. Still, everything ends up in the, it's called the flow through. So it ends up in the personal tax return, the results of it. And then if you say, you know what, no, I want to have a corp, I want to go straight into a corporation, those are the ones that are called Inc., Corp, Incorporated, with those types of Inc., Corp, or Incorporated, with those types of ending. And you may want to go to that. You may want to say, you know what, no, I want to start a corporation, and that's what I want to do. Now there, then you have to take some other steps and say, okay, one of the things when you have a corp and it's like a big corp, what happens is you may have run into sometimes what's called double taxation. You pay at a corporate level, and then you can pay at a personal level if you decide to take dividends out. So then there is a vehicle called S Corp, which is a designation that you can actually make when you become a corp. And even there are like different things that you have to be, like you have to be a U.S. resident, you have to be under 35 shareholders. There's a lot of things that go with it, but most people would qualify if they're from the United States. And that again will help you not have the double taxation. Now, it gets really like, you know, a lot of people like the vehicle called an LLC. Like I said, that's a legal term. And believe it or not, an LLC under that legal term can elect to be treated for IRS purposes as a corp, and then elect to be treated as an S corp. So it gets really, really involved. The simplest form legally is to be an LLC, and then if you're one member in your company, of that company, of the LLC, it will end up on your personal return. I advise you always to seek professional help, because it does get a little complicated, but you know, I can help. Steffi has my contact information if anybody. I love to help, you know, people that are starting off, especially after seeing what a great career path and what a great sole proprietor Stephanie has become. It's very important that when you take those first steps, you do it in a form that you're going to grow into a bigger company, because otherwise then, you know, your bank account doesn't have the name that you want, your license doesn't have the name that you want, because you started off and you didn't set it up for a growth mode. So the first thing obviously is, what do I want to call myself? Some people have a bigger name, and then they do, let's say that you have different types of businesses, and you say, well, I'm going to do an LLC, and I'm going to run, you know, an online business, a retail store, and I don't know, and I'm also going to do some wholesaling, and I want it structured all under different. You could do that with an LLC, and then different names underneath. So there's a lot, and I don't want to overwhelm everybody, but those are the structures. Now let's talk a little bit about licensing, you know, different licenses. So when you open whatever structure, whether you're a sole proprietor or an LLC or a corp, under a sole proprietor, remember we talked about doing business as, which would be, even though you're Stephanie Diaz, you have a name that you're using to do your business as. All these structures allow you to ask the IRS for a separate federal ID, like the federal ID is kind of like the social security number or the identification number of that business. It's a good thing to do, because that way you can open that bank account under that federal ID or identification number, so that everything goes under there. And then you start building that under that name with the IRS. You know, when you open a checking account, when you open a credit card, all those things end up starting to be built under that separate entity. So that's the first, kind of like the first number that you get, kind of like when a baby's born, that they get their social security, same as your business. Regardless of what type of business, it's good to request that federal ID, because that way it's separate. Then in each business, then depending on what state you are, you may have sales tax. So you would have to get a sales tax ID. That sales tax ID will also help you, because if you're buying items that you're going to be reselling, well, you should be able to buy them without paying the sales tax on it, because you're not the last user. You're going to be reselling it. So depending on the laws of your state, that's something that has to be researched too. Now also, depending on whether some businesses, even if you run it out of your home, you need to get a license to do business. So that's a license with the county or the city that you're in. So there's a lot of different, and you may say, well, I don't want to do any of that. Well, that's the only way really, when you think about it, that you start growing, because at some point you want to use all that to be able, like I said, to get a line of credit, or to buy a house, or to buy a warehouse, or to buy a car. And that's the way that you start building the name of this business that you are starting today, that even though you may think it's a very small business, you know, a year from now, it may not be a small business. It may be a really big business. And if you structure it the right way from the beginning, then it's going to be set up to be that big business.
Alrighty, so, wait, come closer. Alrighty, so I do have some questions for you, Mom, because I think these are some questions that a lot of people would want to ask. So the first question being, what are the costs involved in these type of things? Could somebody that, let's say somebody is just starting out this business and doesn't want to spend a ton of money, what are some costs that they would be looking at? What do you recommend if people didn't want to spend as much money? What are your thoughts about cost and pricing?
Okay, so you know, there's a lot of ways that you can go online and do your own. I think the alternative of having a single member LLC would really help with the cost, because you wouldn't have to do a separate tax return for that entity. So a single member LLC still protects you legally. You know, you would open it in the state that you're in, because it's not all Florida.
Yeah.
And it is renewed every year. And you know, once, it probably takes about 3 days. You could do it yourself, or like in our company, you know, we have a charge to do that, but there are ways that you can research and do it yourself. Now, if you were going to hire a professional, the things that you need to ask is, if they open your LLC, will they go ahead and assist you with that with that price? Like in our company, we do like a one-stop. Like we do the LLC, the federal ID, and the sales tax. So that way you got it all. Within a week you have it. You go to the bank, you open your bank account, and you're ready to go. Because sometimes you'll go online and you'll do this LLC, but then now you don't have a federal ID. So you go to the bank with your papers, and you're thinking, okay, I have an LLC. No, well, you do, but it doesn't have a federal ID, so the bank's not gonna open a bank account for you.
It's kind of like what just happened with me, that I did it, my mom was there, but I was doing it myself. And remember, I forgot to put LLC, so they returned it back to me that it didn't come out right, so I had to redo it, which I haven't done yet.
So, so there's a lot. There's a lot.
That's why you guys need a CPA.
And sometimes, you know, you try and do it yourself, but sometimes it's better to find out someone close by. But when you do, make sure that whatever they're going to give you includes everything. That it doesn't include just the LLC, and now you got to figure out how to get this federal ID and the sales tax and everything else. One package, one item.
That's good.
Okay.
That's very good.
So the LLC, it would be probably the best bet, because then you don't have the cost of having to have a separate tax return for a partnership or a corporation. But the good thing about an LLC too is the fact that you can actually, in the future, if you have other partners, it automatically becomes a partnership. And then you can always ask to be treated as a corp too. Because remember, we talked about, and this is like something really important to keep in mind, an LLC is a legal term that takes different characteristics in front of the IRS depending on how many people are in it. So that's really important.
Very good. And the next question I want, because I know a lot of you guys may have already started a business and maybe not necessarily done these things. So what would you recommend for somebody that already started a business but kind of hasn't like done all this stuff? Should they just do what you said to do, or is there different steps that they need to take?
No, if you've started a business, hopefully if you are operating under a different name other than your name, you do have either a fictitious name or a DBA that, you know, allows you to use that name. Because that's another thing. Some people just say, oh, I'm going to use, you know, sales and sales unlimited or whatever. And they're using that name, and they still get payments under their name, and they're using this name like just to advertise sometimes, and they don't have a separate federal ID, they don't have anything set up. And that's important, because your credit card company, your PayPal, your eBay, they can come back, and if they haven't yet, ask you for that information, and you would have to start all over again, and maybe it's not even available. So before you use a name, it is important that you know you have some kind of legal attachment to that name, either through a DBA or through an LLC or a corp. So if you have it all under your name right now, which I think some people may, then it's important to start, you know, start working with an LLC, or if it's a fictitious name, if you want. But it is important. I usually recommend that, you know, you're not going to stop working with what you have right away, because you have everything set up with your bank accounts and your eBay and your credit card companies and your Squares, you know, everything that you have set up. But I would kind of like start forming it and flow into it. So that way you start, you know, working with it as soon as possible.
Okay, and also I want you to tell people that taxes are not a bad thing, because I see a lot of people freaking out about taxes. But right, taxes are a good thing. It means you make money.
Well, taxes is not only about, first of all, you know, there's a lot of states that now are looking into, if you have these accounts, you know, now before people would sell and they wouldn't get a 1099K, which is something that now all the credit card companies are doing. eBay is doing all, you know, so you're going to have, it's important for you to keep books and records, because the last thing you need is that to find out at the end of the year that, hey, I sold 100,000 and I got this report that before I got it, the IRS got it. And I don't have any expense. I don't have any documentation to support my expenses, because obviously everything is not a profit.
Right.
So it is important. And, you know, a lot of times you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car, you can't grow without showing taxes and without showing growth, you know, especially when you work for yourself, because I've seen this with staff. When you're a sole proprietor, it's very important to show growth in what you're doing, because otherwise, how do you get credit? And unfortunately, the way to getting credit is through showing, you know, taxes, and that you are in line with everything that you need to do. So what you need to do, and this is another part, probably a whole new other section, is when you do your pricing, is make sure that you put a line item for tax. You know, that you put a line item for everything that you put into that product, your you know, your gas, your advertising, your camera, everything.
It's gonna be another video.
But it is important
because
sometimes you buy something, say, oh, I'm gonna price it at that. Well, did you account for everything that you have to pay, including tax?
We're gonna talk
and
about
yourself, because that's another thing that Steph and I struggle with a lot. Paying yourself.
Yeah. So that's probably gonna be like the next video we talk about. Will more than likely be how you should pay yourself, kind of like different routes of paying yourself. Definitely talking about what you just said about taking into account when you price, all that kind of stuff. So, oh, and you know what else would be a good video? Talking about, because I see a lot of people saying, oh, I could just take it as in, what is it, a deductible? What is it that people say? Oh,
a deduction or it's an expense?
An expense. I could just write it off. Well, a lot of people don't know that there's rules for gas. There's rules for home offices.
There's a lot of rules, and unfortunately, you know, the way that the taxes, you have to have the documentation, and God forbid you ever got audited, and it has to be in line with what you need to have. So yes, you can take a lot of deductions, but the nice thing is if you set it up where they're all the way that you would have to present it. Like I tell my clients, you know, have 5 bins for 5 years, and you start shredding after those 5 years, but you have all your documentation of your purchases and everything. But you know,
that's different videos. Yeah, we're gonna be making lots of different videos, of course, if you guys like it. And maybe if there's a lot of questions and whatnot, I can maybe get my mom to come live with me on one of my live shows. Just Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll see. I just thought this would be such an important video to make as the first one, because this is such an important step that a lot of people overlook when they're starting a business. And since this is my new series, this is the first thing I did when I started the new business. So that's what I wanted to show in the video, just to, you know, make people aware that there's stuff that they need to do before just starting to sell. So that's all for now, guys. Thank you, Mom, so much for coming onto the YouTube channel. I'm sure everyone is going to absolutely love this.
I hope so.
And I'm sure you will be back on. And yeah, we're gonna go eat some barbecue now. Tomorrow's the 4th of July, which is also exciting. So I hope you guys are taking some rest off, some time off, which we are both doing because today's Monday and we're not working.
Yep.
And so tomorrow we have also a fun day. So I hope you guys have a great night, a great day tomorrow, and I'll see you guys in my next video.
Bye, everyone. Good
Bye,
luck.
guys.